What if I told you that every week, a significant blow is dealt to Russian forces in Crimea, shaking the very foundations of their control? It's true. Just last week, Ukraine executed a series of astonishing strikes that have left the world in awe. But there's more to this than mere military might. There's a cunning strategy at play that aims to erase Russian presence from Crimea entirely. As Vladimir Putin watches his grip on the peninsula slip away, you won't believe how Ukraine is orchestrating a master plan. Let's dive into the details of Ukraine's recent operations. Just days ago, on September 9th, the Kyiv Post revealed that Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency, known as HUR, successfully obliterated two critical Russian radar systems deep within occupied Crimea. These systems, named Podlet and Neboem, fell just before Ukraine commemorated Military Intelligence Day on September 7th. How poetic that Ukraine turned Russia's defenses into fireworks for their celebration. These radar systems were among Russia's most valuable air defense assets, crucial for detecting the low-flying drones used in Ukraine's daring attacks. The strike on Neboem was particularly striking. HUR reported that it took out the radar while it was on the move, showcasing the precision of Ukrainian forces. These were precision strikes against high-value air defense targets of the occupiers in temporarily occupied Crimea, stated Ukrainian intelligence, underscoring the significance of this operation. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Just a week earlier, Ukrainian intelligence had also destroyed two Mi-8 helicopters stationed at the Hvardiisk military air base in Crimea, each costing Russia a staggering $20 to $30 million. This loss is not just about capability, it's a financial blow that plays right into Ukraine's strategic hands. The pattern is clear. Ukraine strikes multiple targets in a single day, pauses, and then strikes again, creating a relentless cycle of destruction that has become the norm. With each attack, they systematically degrade Russia's operational capabilities, leaving them vulnerable. As Ukraine continues to dismantle Russian radar systems linked to critical air defense units like the S-300 and S-400, they are employing a novel tactic, blinding the enemy. Instead of risking drones against well-defended units, they target the radar stations first. This leaves Crimea's defenses weakened, setting the stage for future assaults. But what's the ultimate goal of this relentless campaign? Is it merely to inflict damage, or is there a deeper strategy at work? This is where the real intrigue lies, and it's a revelation that could change everything. The man uncovering this strategy is Paul Warburg, a geopolitical analyst who asserts that understanding Crimea's significance to both Russia and Ukraine is crucial. For Russia, Crimea is not just land, it's a symbol. Since the annexation in 2014, the phrase Krym nash, meaning Crimea is ours, has reverberated through Russian society, cementing the peninsula's importance in the national psyche. But what's more alarming is that after the annexation, Russia intentionally relocated a large number of ethnic Russians to Crimea, complicating any potential military efforts by Ukraine to reclaim the territory. Warburg highlights the risk involved. A direct assault could lead to casualties among these relocated populations, providing Putin with propaganda fuel. With Crimea acting almost like an island, its narrow land bridge creates logistical challenges for any military operation. Even with a force ready to act, they would face significant obstacles at this choke point. So, as Ukraine continues its calculated strikes, it's not just about immediate gains. This is a long-term strategy, carefully crafted to pave the way for reclaiming Crimea and erasing Russian influence. Can Ukraine pull off this ambitious plan? Stay tuned to find out how this unfolding story will reshape the future of Crimea and the region. Recent weeks have seen a striking blow to Russian military assets in Crimea, signaling a relentless Ukrainian campaign. Just days ago, Ukraine destroyed two Mi-8 helicopters at the Hvardiisk air base, each worth a staggering $20 to $30 million. But this isn't merely about the planes lost, it's the financial hit that shreds Russia's resources, a tactic Ukraine has masterfully woven into its larger plan. Alongside these aerial losses, a Buk 2190 tugboat was sunk, a crucial support vessel for Russia's elite underwater sabotage forces, armed with highly trained combat divers. Depriving them of this asset weakens their underwater operations, stirring a deeper decay in Russia's offensive capabilities. What's unfolding reveals a chilling pattern. Ukraine strikes multiple targets in a swift, surgical sweep, then pulls back, waiting, only to strike again with precision days later. This brutal rhythm of attack and pause has become a weekly drumbeat of destruction across Crimea. But why this method? What's the genius behind this tactical pulse that wears down a formidable adversary bit by bit? Ukraine's goal is clear and brutally effective. It's not just about outright destruction but about crippling Russia's vital air defense networks, systems like the S-300 and the S-400. These shield Crimea from airborne threats and keep Russia's grip firm. Striking at the radar stations that guide these defenses doesn't destroy the missiles and launchers directly, but blinds them, turning powerful weapons into blind, useless tools. Instead of risking drones being shot down trying to hit heavily defended launchers, Ukraine cleverly disables the eyes of the system. Until these radar stations are repaired, the air defenses stay vulnerable, a gaping wound in Russia's complex shield. This is more than temporary damage, it's a doorway. Each blow makes room for more devastating raids deeper inside Crimea. Just recently, the iconic Bayraktar drone has made a fiery comeback. Once sidelined due to its vulnerability against Russia's electronic warfare and air defense, it now returns, swooping in to finish what the radar strikes began. Ukrainian drones took down a speedy Russian boat ferrying airborne troops to the tense Tendrivska spit. The blast killed 7 soldiers and wounded 4, a grim reminder of the new vulnerability Russian forces face beneath the stirred Crimean skies. Does this relentless assault signal a new era in the Crimean conflict? Ukraine's precision strikes are chipping away at Russia's defenses piece by piece. But what if there's more than meets the eye? What if this cycle of destruction, pauses, and renewed assault is just the surface of a deeper, strategic masterpiece? In the next chapter, we'll uncover the full scope of Ukraine's long game, a plan so daring, it could shatter Russia's hold on Crimea forever. Can Russia withstand the storm as its fortress slowly crumbles from within? The answer lies just beyond the horizon. In this riveting tale of geopolitical drama, a striking turn of events unfolds in Crimea as Ukraine embarks on a mission that is far more than mere strikes against Russian forces. As we dive into this story, prepare yourself for shocking revelations about Ukraine's ingenious, long-term strategy. Behind the headlines of explosive clashes and tactical maneuvers lies a blueprint designed to reclaim a crucial piece of land, a plan that sends shivers down the spine of Russian leadership. As news continues to pour in about Ukraine's successful attacks on Russian assets within Crimea, many fail to understand the intricacies of their approach. Each airstrike conducted by Ukraine not only disrupts the status quo but serves a greater purpose, the complete de-Russification of the peninsula. This isn't just about reclaiming territory, it's about dismantling the very fabric of Russian influence. It's a psychological warfare that rattles the Kremlin and shakes the foundations of their control. Among those analyzing this military ballet is geopolitical analyst Paul Warburg. He argues that understanding the high stakes at play requires looking at the history and emotive ties both nations have with Crimea. Warburg emphasizes the symbolic heft the region holds, especially for Russia, where losing Crimea is akin to a national tragedy. After Russia's annexation in 2014, the phrase "Crimea is ours" became a rallying cry, cementing the peninsula's significance in the Russian collective consciousness. The first step in Ukraine's intricate plan involves systematic strikes. Ukrainian forces have recently targeted key Russian installations, obliterating critical radar systems intended for detecting low-flying aircraft. Each strike taken by Ukraine not only degrades Russian defensive umbrellas but sends a clear message: the days of unchallenged dominance are numbered. As the frequencies of these attacks accelerate, the pattern reveals itself, a cycle of destruction that escalates both tension and turmoil in Crimea. However, it's not just about military strikes, it's about setting the stage for a larger transformation. The goal is to create a faltering atmosphere in Crimea that will eventually lead to a broader offensive. This chaos opens avenues for further drone and naval operations, an army poised to take full advantage of the vacuum left by weakened Russian resistance. Yet, the road to reclaiming Crimea is not free of peril. If Ukraine were to launch a full-scale assault, it risks igniting a humanitarian crisis that could be manipulated for propaganda by Russia. Warburg warns that a direct military operation could lead to international backlash, complicating efforts to rectify the occupation established in 2014. With around 247,000 ethnic Russians having settled in Crimea post-annexation, the potential for a bruising conflict looms large. Given the precarious geography, a narrow land bridge and an almost island-like status, any military incursion would be fraught with hardship. The landscape itself could become a literal bottleneck for troops, impeding the very forces tasked with liberating the peninsula. As our narrative unfolds, it becomes clear that Ukraine's approach is a masterclass in strategic warfare. They are not merely seeking to regain land, they are crafting an elaborate tapestry of regaining identity, purpose, and sovereignty. The climax is yet to come, and what waits at the heart of this conflict remains shrouded in uncertainty. The question lingers: what will be the ultimate fate of Crimea? Will it succumb to another era of struggle, or will Ukraine rise against all odds to reclaim its rightful place? The answer lies within the unfolding saga of this enduring conflict. What if a territory could change hands not through sheer force, but through a cunning strategy that plays on deeper emotions and fears? In the shadow of conflict, Ukraine is executing a meticulous plan, aimed at reclaiming Crimea without the direct confrontation that could spell disaster. As the tides of war shift, the ominous question emerges: can a country regain its former territories through intellect over brute strength? As Ukraine continues its campaign against Russian holdings in Crimea, recent weeks have shed light on an intricate strategy that defies traditional warfare. On September 9, the Kyiv Post reported a significant victory for Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency, known as HUR. Special forces successfully targeted and obliterated two pivotal Russian radar systems, the Podlet and Nebo-M, just days before Ukraine's Military Intelligence Day. This was not merely a strike, it was a symbol of resilience. The destruction of these radar assets, crucial for monitoring low-flying aircraft and drones, underscores Ukraine's evolving military acumen and strategic foresight. But this is just the beginning. As Ukraine meticulously dismantles Russian resources in Crimea, their strikes reveal a calculated rhythm. Ukrainian forces first unleash a barrage on multiple targets, sowing chaos before retreating into silence, only to strike again with precision. This pattern isn't random, it's a deeper strategy crafted around denying the Russian military its pivotal command and control capabilities. Each targeted asset, be it the Mi-8 helicopters or the Buk 2190 tugboat, serves to cripple the very backbone of Russian operations. The stakes are rising. With each successful attack, the doors to further incursions into Russian-held territory swing open. Just consider the resurgence of the Bayraktar drone, a potent symbol of Ukraine's adaptive strategy. Suddenly, this once quiet tool of warfare is back in action. In early September, it played a key role in the destruction of a Russian speedboat, striking fear into the hearts of adversaries and taking down lives that could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Yet, despite these victories, the journey to reclaim Crimea is fraught with challenges. Ukraine is not merely fighting a military battle but a psychological one. The complexities of the land, its strategic significance to Russia, transform direct assaults into heavy burdens of loss. Warburg, a geopolitical analyst, highlights how the narrow land corridor connecting Crimea to the mainland poses tremendous risks for any army attempting a ground offensive. A single breach could turn into a massacre, feeding into Putin's propaganda machine. Russia has turned Crimea into a formidable stronghold, embedding its influence while reinforcing Russian identities within the territory. The cunning of the Russian strategy complicates direct engagements, but Ukraine remains undeterred. Warburg believes in a two-pronged strategy. The first prong fuels Russia's errors by preying on its psychological ties to Crimea, creating a narrative that ultimately embarrasses the Kremlin. In the early days of the conflict, Ukraine aggressively targeted Russian assets surrounding Crimea. This led to Russia's growing anxiety, proving that a well-thought-out approach can unearth vulnerabilities, much like a thief turning the lights off in a darkened room. Cunning partnerships and innovative tactics are crucial, and Ukraine understands this well. But what lies ahead for Ukraine is a long game, a saga yet to unfold. The process of reversing years of Russian occupation won't happen overnight, but this calculated patience could be the key to a resounding victory. As the world watches, Ukraine's story continues to evolve, filled with hope and the promise of reclaiming what was once lost. Just how far will they go to achieve their aims? The stage is set, and the next chapter of this conflict is about to be written. The tension in Crimea reaches new heights each week as Ukraine continues to strike Russian assets with surprising efficiency. It seems as if each announcement brings with it the downfall of another piece of Russian military hardware, fueling the narrative of Ukraine's ongoing resistance. What's not immediately evident, however, is the deeply calculated plan behind these operations, a strategy that aims not just to dislocate but to permanently eradicate Russian influence from the peninsula. Recent reports illustrate just how successful these operations have been. For instance, on September 9, Ukrainian forces dismantled key radar systems, crippling Russian air defenses in Crimea. The intelligence agency's triumph was celebrated shortly after Ukraine's Military Intelligence Day, emphasizing their success in creating a needed distraction. This precision was evident when they destroyed the Nebo-M radar system on the move, an operation dripping with audacity and calculation. But the stakes are high. The chaos isn't limited to just radar strikes. On the same day, a tugboat tied to Russia's underwater sabotage forces was destroyed, signaling a foundational shift in naval operational capabilities. Ukraine seems to have mastered an emerging pattern. It strikes hard and frequently, then refrains for a while. Each attack assaults Russia's military strength, destabilizing operations in Crimea and leaving losses that inflict not just damage but enormous financial strain. So, what's underpinning this cycle? With each successful strike against Russian radar, Ukraine opens paths for drone assaults. Old stalwarts like the Bayraktar drone have made a comeback, targeting valuable Russian units and prompting significant troop losses. The strategy isn't simply about immediate impact. The sustained harm creates openings for future assaults as Russian air defense systems suffer. However, the nightmare for Putin goes beyond immediate military losses. His grip over Crimea, perceived as sacred, is crumbling under coordinated Ukrainian strikes that are designed to bleed Russian resources dry. But here's where the twist appears. The operations are as much about psychological warfare as they are about physical destruction. Enter Paul Warburg, a geopolitical analyst who unravels Ukraine's two-pronged strategy, broadening the conflict and quietly de-Russifying Crimea. He highlights the complex dilemmas Ukraine faces in retaking Crimea. Image this: Russia has strategically resettled ethnic Russians in the area, creating a humanitarian disaster should Ukraine attempt outright reclaiming the peninsula. Warburg notes that Ukraine must maneuver meticulously through narrow land routes, making direct assaults fraught with peril. This intricate map of conflict frames why Ukraine's approach appears counterintuitive, always balancing on the knife edge of costly strategic decisions. As they engage in this elaborate dance, the question lingers: can Ukraine sustain this momentum? By encouraging Russia to rebuild, even briefly, Ukraine forces an expenditure of resources that the Kremlin can hardly afford. It's a duality of chaos and control. Each strike reflects a deeper tactical finesse aimed not just at immediate gains but at dismantling the very foundations of Russian presence in Crimea. In this high-stakes game, every setback for Russia chips away at its claims, hinting at a long-term goal shrouded in military fog and strategy. In the following segments, we'll explore precisely how each aspect of this campaign plays into Ukraine's overarching ambition for Crimea and what that could mean for the future of the peninsula. Prepare for revelations that will shift your perspective. Imagine the crushing pressure building inside the Kremlin every time a missile crashes into Crimea. Why? Because Crimea isn't just territory to Russia, it's a symbol, a sacred prize that must appear invincible. Yet, every time Ukraine smashes through Russian defenses, Moscow is forced to invest huge sums, rebuilding what's lost over and over, even when, strategically, it makes little sense. This is a psychological trap, expertly set by Ukraine. The Kremlin knows that showing strength in Crimea isn't just about military power, it's about convincing ethnic Russians living there that the government truly protects them. Lose that illusion, and those residents might flee, unraveling Russia's grip on the peninsula from within. But protection comes at a steep price. Russia is no stranger to spending lavishly to maintain its hold over Crimea. Back in 2019, renowned economist Sergei Alexishenko revealed Russia had poured over $19 billion into the peninsula through federal subsidies and state-owned companies, excluding the hidden costs caused by sanctions. Fast forward to today, and the financial drain has only intensified. In 2025, reports expose that Moscow runs at least 2 dedicated programs funneling billions into Crimea and occupied zones within Ukraine, mostly just to patch up damage and keep things running. Add to this the staggering expense of fighting a war that could cost Russia up to $1 billion every single day. Now layer on Ukraine's relentless strikes, which cripple the very military assets Russia needs to make Crimea feel safe. The result? A vicious cycle where Moscow must keep rebuilding costly defenses, while the war rages on elsewhere. Geopolitical analyst Paul Warburg explains it like this: Ukraine's strategy is a slow but steady financial chokehold. Each targeted blow drains Russian resources, pulling troops and funds away from other battlefronts that are crucial to Russia's efforts. Putin faces a devastating dilemma: pump endless money into defending Crimea or divert resources to frontline fights against Ukraine. Either choice weakens Russia's overall position. Ukraine's methodical campaign is more than a battlefield tactic, it's a war of attrition aimed at exhausting Russia's will and wallet. Imagine the Kremlin's frustration as no matter how much they spend, the damage keeps coming, and with it, the threat of losing one of their most cherished symbols. What happens when Moscow can't keep up? Will the relentless pressure finally force a crack in the iron grip holding Crimea? The answer lies in a strategy that runs deeper than explosions and destruction, a plan shaping the future of an entire region. Stay close, because the story is far from over. Previously, we saw how Ukraine's relentless strikes target Russian assets in Crimea, forcing Moscow to pour money and resources into constant repairs. This costly cycle diverts Russian strength away from other fronts. Now, a shocking dilemma confronts Vladimir Putin: should he protect the vulnerable Russian settlers in Crimea, or guard his strategic interests elsewhere? The answer reveals a stunning twist in Ukraine's master plan. What if Ukraine's biggest weapon isn't bombs or missiles, but fear itself? Imagine living in Crimea, surrounded by a foreign power whose grip feels firm, but fragile. Now picture the lifeline connecting you to Russia, a colossal steel bridge stretching over stormy waters, creaking under constant threat. This is the Kerch Strait Bridge. It's not just a structure, it's a symbol of control and hope for those settled far from home. Yet, destroying this bridge outright? That would be reckless. The damage it could unleash speaks volumes. Underwater explosions have already shaken its supports. Soon, Ukraine could launch a missile carrying more than 1,000 kilograms of explosive force, capable of turning the bridge into rubble. But here's the twist: Ukraine has no intention of pulverizing that lifeline. Why? The secret lies in psychological warfare. Ukraine wants to send a message loud and clear. By striking near the bridge, showing it's within reach, Ukraine stokes a deep fear. If you were an ethnic Russian placed there by Moscow, wouldn't you rethink your future? The constant threat to your escape route will push you to leave before it's too late. Instead of firing missiles that destroy, Ukraine fires signals that unsettle. This is the genius of the second part of Ukraine's two-pronged strategy: leave a golden escape route, a fragile bridge that haunts with the possibility of collapse. It's a calculated move forcing Russia's settlers to question their safety every moment. The bridge becomes more than metal and concrete, it becomes a ticking clock. Putin faces a treacherous balancing act. He must protect a population he engineered to strengthen his hold, while safeguarding key assets elsewhere. Every attack near the Kerch Strait Bridge forces critical decisions. Does Russia reinforce the bridge, investing precious resources? Or do they lower defenses, risking a mass exodus that unravels their narrative of control? This tactic turns the tables. Ukraine doesn't need to storm Crimea in a frontal assault. It doesn't need to risk humanitarian disaster with reckless attacks. Instead, it breaks Russia's grip one psychological brick at a time, bleeding Moscow dry over time. With each threat to the bridge's survival, Ukraine signals, the walls holding Crimea in Russian hands are cracking. As you listen, picture the scene: salt-scented winds swirl around the narrow land bridge connecting Crimea to the mainland. The distant rumble of the sea merges with the metallic groan of the Kerch Bridge, always under threat. In this quiet tension lives the choice resting on Moscow's shoulders. How much longer can Putin gamble with the fate of those who call Crimea home? The next part uncovers how this fear strategy blends with an even deeper plan. What if Ukraine's aim is not just to destabilize Russia's hold, but to reclaim Crimea completely, resetting the region's fate forever? Stay close, because the full story reveals a strategy so bold, it could change everything in this high-stakes chess game. Previously, we explored how Ukraine's daring strikes have targeted Russian air defenses in Crimea, opening the skies and breathing new life into drone assaults. We learned how the destruction of radar systems and key military assets is part of a relentless cycle that weakens Russian defenses bit by bit. But what comes next? How does Ukraine's strategy reach beyond just battlefield wins? Here's the shocking truth: the towering Kerch Strait Bridge, the vital connection between Crimea and mainland Russia, has survived wave after wave of attacks, not because Ukraine lacks the power to destroy it, but because Ukraine wants it to stay. Why keep a bridge that connects your enemy? Because it's not just a bridge, it's a psychological weapon. This massive structure is more than steel and concrete, it's a lifeline for the thousands of ethnic Russians Russia moved into Crimea since 2014. It's their escape route, their pathway out when alarm bells start to ring. Imagine living trapped on a peninsula that's slowly turning into a powder keg. You hear constant whispers of strikes targeting vital military assets around you. Then, there's the looming threat hanging over the Kerch Strait Bridge. Every explosion, every missile strike sends a chilling signal: we could come for you next. Ukraine's plan? To make those ethnic Russians so unsettled and fearful that they start fleeing Crimea on their own. They don't need to launch a full-scale invasion, fear and uncertainty do the heavy lifting. Slowly, the grip Russia holds over Crimea begins to unravel, not with a boom, but with a creeping exodus. The strategy's genius lies in patience. Rather than pounding the bridge into rubble, Ukraine keeps hammering Russian defenses elsewhere. Russia is forced to pour resources endlessly into rebuilding radar stations, helicopters, and naval vessels lost in these precision strikes. Money and manpower meant for the wider war effort bleed away, diverted to patch a sinking fortress. This double-edged approach wears Russia down over time. As the ethnic Russian population senses their precarious situation, and the bridge teeters under constant threat, they face a choice: stay and risk being caught in a collapsing stronghold, or escape before the walls close in. If they leave, Putin's carefully orchestrated plan to solidify Russia's claim on Crimea shatters like glass. Ukraine's foothold back onto the peninsula becomes a reality not through direct assault but through strategic attrition and psychological pressure. There's a catch, though: this marathon strategy demands time, resilience, and relentless pressure. Russia's financial strength fuels Crimea's defense, and until that source dries, the battle will grind on. But Ukraine is accelerating that timeline. Last August's bold Black Sea raid obliterated key military installations, squeezing the Kremlin's resources even tighter. This is no ordinary war of tanks and guns. It's a chess game where every strike, every threat against that bridge, moves the pieces closer to a stunning checkmate. The question is, will the bridge fall before the fortress does? Or will Ukraine's clever ploy force the occupants out without a single full-scale attack? The future of Crimea hangs in the balance, and what seems like a simple structure might just be the key to regaining one of Ukraine's most coveted treasures. In the heart of geopolitical turmoil, there lies a question that's echoed through the corridors of power and whispers among the citizens of two nations: what does Crimea mean to Ukraine and Russia? Understanding the depths of this rivalry requires us to confront a harsh reality, a reality where lives hang in the balance and the stakes are more than mere territory. Just a few years after Russia claimed Crimea in 2014, the move was not merely a political act. It was a calculated strategy, involving the infusion of approximately 247,000 Russian nationals into the peninsula. This massive settlement was designed to intertwine Russian identity with Crimean geography, creating a humanitarian dilemma should Ukraine attempt to reclaim its lost territory. The result? A precarious situation for Ukraine, where any attempt to retake Crimea would risk the lives of ethnic Russians and give the Kremlin a propaganda bonanza to exploit. The question lingers, can Ukraine afford a direct conflict to reclaim Crimea? As geopolitical analyst Paul Warburg sheds light on the complexities, he reveals that the land bridge connecting Crimea to Ukraine is more than mere geography. It acts as a vital choke point, a narrow stretch that could trap Ukrainian forces in a deadly crossfire, making a full-scale invasion a risky gamble. Could it lead to disastrous losses for Ukraine, transforming a simple mission into an arduous war of attrition? Meanwhile, the memories of families displaced during this transition linger like shadows. The cries of people leaving their homes echo in the air, mingling with the scent of fear and uncertainty. This mass migration was not accidental, it was a deliberate effort to strengthen Russia's claim to Crimea. As we unravel this layered narrative, it becomes apparent that the battlefield is set not just on land but within the hearts and minds of individuals caught in the crossfire. As the tides of conflict shift, Crimea becomes a symbol, its significance deepening. It's more than a geographic stronghold, it represents national identity, collective memories, and the wounds of history. With every news report, with each military strike, the complexities surrounding Crimea continue to unfold, revealing that the struggle for this land is far from over. What lies ahead for Ukraine and Crimea remains a tense question. The outcome is uncertain, yet one thing is clear, the echoes of a divided past and the desire for a united future are woven into the very fabric of this conflict, challenging both nations to face the truth at the heart of their struggle. As we delve deeper into this intricate tale, the next chapter unveils the strategies that Ukraine employs in its quest for Crimea. What unfolds may surprise you, as layers of deception and resolve converge in this ongoing narrative of hope, loss, and the relentless pursuit of identity. What will it take to break the chains of history and redefine the future for Crimea? The answer is just beyond the horizon. As we dive deeper into the unfolding events in Crimea, let's revisit what's been happening. Ukraine's recent strikes have opened up new opportunities for attacks, particularly with the resurgence of the Bayraktar drone, a significant player in Ukraine's aerial strategy. This powerful weapon had been sidelined due to vulnerabilities against Russian defenses, but it's back, and it's making waves once again. Imagine the hum of drone engines cutting through the air, the tension in the atmosphere as these machines of war prepare to wreak havoc on unsuspecting enemies. In early September, Ukraine's Bayraktar drone struck decisively, taking out a fast-moving Russian vessel part of the Black Sea Fleet. This boat was transporting airborne troops heading to the high-stakes area known as Tendrovska Spit. The outcome? 7 soldiers lost their lives, and 4 others sustained injuries, showcasing the efficiency and precision of these aerial strikes. According to reports from Euromaidan Press, Ukraine has reignited its famed campaign of drone warfare, launching a wave of attacks that have systematically crippled Russian air defenses. With each successful strike, the skies become ever clearer for Ukrainian forces, effectively leaving Russian naval and ground troops vulnerable. The toll is staggering. These drone operations have reportedly cost Russia hundreds of soldiers and significant naval equipment, propelling Ukraine's momentum. But there's more at play here. Each time Ukraine neutralizes an air defense system, it paves the way for subsequent assaults on critical targets. The cycle is relentless, Russian air defenses crumble, more assets are obliterated, chaos reigns in Crimea, and Russia's grasp loosens further. It seems like an endless loop of destruction for the enemy, but that's not where this story ends. What if this strategy is merely a piece of a grander puzzle? What if these drone strikes are part of a long-term objective to erase Russian influence from Crimea entirely? A plan that could redefine the future of the peninsula itself. Stay tuned, as we uncover the depths of this strategy and the motivations driving Ukraine's relentless campaign. As we explore further, we need to understand a crucial aspect: why is Crimea such a coveted territory? What does it symbolize for both Ukraine and Russia? The stakes are higher than mere geography. Join me next, as we delve into the complexities of Crimea's significance, both historically and emotionally, and how these factors shape the ongoing conflict. The tension is palpable, and you won't want to miss what unfolds next. What will happen when the intricacies of history meet the realities of modern warfare? How will Ukraine plan to reclaim Crimea? Last time, we explored how Russia's calculated move to flood Crimea with ethnic Russians after 2014 turned the region into a ticking humanitarian crisis. This shift did more than just redefine borders. It created a deadly propaganda weapon for Moscow if Ukraine ever attempted a straightforward retake. But that's only part of the story. Today, we uncover the deeper strategic nightmare Ukraine faces, the brutal geography of Crimea itself. Imagine standing on the faint, rugged strip of land connecting Crimea to Ukraine's mainland. The salty air bites your skin, and in the distance, the clatter of distant artillery echoes through a tense sky. This narrow land bridge, barely noticeable on a map, is a deadly funnel, a choke point that turns any army's advance into a nightmare. For all practical purposes, Crimea might as well be an island. That slender passage is the only land route in or out. And if Ukraine dared to launch a full-scale ground assault, the soldiers would find themselves trapped in this iron grip, subjected to relentless bombardment from entrenched defenses. But here's a burning question: how can an army break through when every inch of that corridor is fortified with mines, artillery set precisely to fire, and Russian troops ready to unleash hell? Every foot gained risks becoming a battlefield of attrition, bleeding Ukrainian forces dry long before reaching the heart of the peninsula. The only other access point is the Kerch Strait Bridge in the east, a strategic bottleneck just as perilous. These choke points don't just slow down an offensive, they transform it into a perilous death trap. It's no wonder Ukraine's commanders tread carefully, knowing full well that charging in blindly is a death sentence. Flashback: in 2014, as Russian flags rose over Crimean streets and the chilling scent of fear filled the air, Ukrainian defenders could only watch the peninsula slip away. The realization sank in: to reclaim this land, sheer force wasn't enough. Crimea wasn't just territory, it was a fortress built on symbolism, strategic defense, and the harsh geography of that razor-thin isthmus. So, if a direct assault spells disaster, what is Ukraine's alternative? How do you chip away at an enemy entrenched behind layers and layers of protection? The answer lies not just in brute force, but in a cunning, multi-layered plan that's reshaping the battlefield entirely. What if every strike, every destroyed radar system, every sabotage mission was more than just harassment? What if it was the chessboard opening, a deliberate step toward breaking Russia's grip without wading into that deadly chokehold? The stakes are sky-high. Can Ukraine outmaneuver a rival determined to turn Crimea into an impregnable fortress? Will strategy and patience win over sheer firepower? Stay with us as the layers unfold, because this battle for Crimea is not what it seems, and the real breakthrough is yet to come.